The Lord Jesus was sent into the world with a clear destiny to die for our sins and to rise again in victory. His resurrection was not an accident. It was the center of God's plan. Jesus himself declared openly that he would rise on the third day, Matthew 16:21. Heaven had already ordained it. His rising was his purpose, his assignment, and his ordained future. But notice something very important. The enemies of Jesus also heard about this destiny. They became aware of what was written concerning him. The chief priests and Pharisees said, "We remember that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.'" Matthew 27:63. Because they knew his purpose, they reacted. They went to the tomb, sealed the stone, placed guards around it, and did everything possible to block what God had destined. Matthew 27:64-66. This is a deep spiritual truth. The moment the enemy becomes aware of your destiny, he tries to block it. Just like Jesus had a destiny, you also have a destiny. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." You are not an accident. God has assigned you a future, a purpose, and a divine rising. But in the same way, your enemies, both human and spiritual, become aware of the grace, calling, favor, and greatness upon your life. Satan does not attack people who have no future. He attacks those with a rising, those with a calling, those with a divine assignment. Like the tomb of Jesus, the enemy tries to seal, block, hinder, resist, and delay what God has written concerning you. But here is the good news: they did not succeed. The stone was heavy, the seal was strong. The guards were trained soldiers, but none of them could stop the power of God. On the third day, an angel came down from heaven, rolled away the stone, and the guards trembled and fell like dead men. Matthew 28:24. Every human effort to stop the plan of God failed. This is also your story. Your enemies will not succeed. Their plans will fail. Their strategies will collapse. Their seals will break. Their stones will roll away. Their monitoring eyes will be blinded. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." But notice something else. Though Jesus had a destiny, heaven still sent angels to act. Angels were sent to move the stone. Angels were sent to confuse the guards. Angels were sent to clear the path for his rising. In the same way, you need spiritual forces to work for you. Destiny does not manifest by silence. Destiny responds to prayer. Revelation must meet intercession. When you pray with understanding, heaven releases help. When you pray with revelation, angels are deployed. Hebrews 1:14 says angels are ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. Therefore, pray these prayers. Pray them with fire. Pray them with revelation. As you pray, angels will move. Forces will rise. Stones will roll away. What God has written about you will manifest. Your destiny will speak, and no enemy will be able to stop it. I decree that every stone placed to hold down my destiny is rolled away by the Lord's angels. I decree that every force blocking my rising is removed by divine power. I decree that every seal set against my progress is broken by heavenly authority. Every assignment of darkness to keep me hidden is canceled by the resurrection power. I decree that every monitoring spirit watching my destiny is scattered by angelic fire. Every barrier built to stop my manifestation is shattered by the Lord's might. No satanic guard can hold back what God has ordained for me. I decree that the same power that raised Jesus breaks every limitation around my life. Every invisible blockade resisting my next level is cleared by angels. Every spiritual wall around my destiny collapses under God's command. I decree that every heavy stone sitting on my breakthrough is lifted by divine hands. Every agenda designed to keep me in one spot is overturned by heavenly forces. every dark operation against my rising is silenced by the voice of the Lord. Every resistance to my divine assignment melts before God's presence. I decree that every power trying to bury my purpose loses its grip over me. I decree that every strong man positioned at my gate of glory is arrested by angels. I decree that every imprisonment of my destiny ends by resurrection authority. I decree that every satanic watcher stationed at my place of emergence is blinded. Every blockade in the spirit hindering my speed is cleared away. Every plan to suffocate my calling is destroyed by God's power. I decree that every force trying to shut down my voice is removed from my path. Every grip of darkness over my rising is broken forever. I decree that every hand holding down my lifting loses its strength. I decree that every tomb-like situation around me receives resurrection light. Every spiritual stone designed to imprison my destiny is cast away. Every power delaying my movement is uprooted completely. I decree that every invisible chain tying my advancement is broken. Every gate closed against me opens by divine authority. I decree that every enemy waiting to hinder me is overthrown by angels. I decree that every spiritual embargo on my manifestation is lifted. Every strategy of darkness against my rising becomes useless. Every conspiracy to limit my destiny collapses. Every demonic reinforcement against me scatters. Every voice saying I will not rise is silenced. I decree that every curse spoken to keep me down is reversed. Every demonic stone placed on my progress is moved. Every evil surveillance over my destiny is cut off. Every scheme meant to trap my future is broken apart. Every unseen hand pushing me backward is withered. I decree that every limitation assigned to my name is canceled. Every darkness around my destiny receives divine light. Every invisible prison door opens now. I decree that every satanic guard over my life is dismissed. I decree that every chain of stagnation breaks instantly. I decree that every resistance to my calling is weakened. Every power whispering against my progress is muted. I decree that every cage holding my glory releases me. Every force hired to stop my shining is removed. Every unseen stone at my doorway of success is rolled away. Every ancient power fighting my destiny bows to Jesus. Every plot to bury my greatness fails. I decree that every cloud covering my rising clears. Every evil hand on my potential is lifted. I decree that every darkness around my path flees. I decree that every tomb assigned to keep me silent breaks open. Every shadow blocking my light disappears. I decree that every negative prophecy over my future is canceled. I decree that every delay spirit around me is bound. I decree that every demonic stone at my gate is shattered. I decree that every adversary of my destiny is removed. I decree that every spiritual cage around my ideas breaks. I decree that every satanic seal on my success is broken. I decree that every barrier between me and my purpose is dissolved. I decree that every enemy's expectation concerning me fails. I decree that every structure of darkness around me crumbles. I decree that every force resisting my joy is scattered. I decree that every power attempting to silence my destiny is defeated. I decree that every evil watcher monitoring my movement is blinded. I decree that every demonic obstacle assigned to me is cleared. I decree that every tombstone of shame over my life is lifted. I decree that every spiritual weight dragging me down is destroyed. I decree that every conspiracy against my manifestation is exposed. I decree that every assignment to frustrate my path is canceled. I decree that every evil presence around my destiny gate is removed. I decree that every force holding my blessing is displaced. I decree that every spiritual barrier at my door of greatness is broken. I decree that every negative influence around my future is dismantled. I decree that every hindering spirit at my rising point is dismissed. I decree that every old pattern resisting my progress ends now. I decree that every satanic stone designed to bury my voice is rolled away. I decree that every manipulation around my destiny is cut off. I decree that every attempt to cage my influence is destroyed. I decree that every darkness covering my star is gone. I decree that every resistance to my testimony collapses. I decree that every spiritual block at my path is lifted. I decree that every evil assignment against my lifting is broken. I decree that every enemy standing at my open door is removed. I decree that every voice of limitation over my destiny is canceled. I decree that every chain of delay on my life is broken. I decree that every tomb they built for my purpose is emptied. I decree that every evil assignment against my lifting is broken. Every enemy standing at my open door is removed. I decree that every voice of limitation over my destiny is canceled. I decree that every chain of delay on my life is broken. I decree that every tomb they built for my purpose is emptied. I decree that every evil authority placed over my destiny loses its power. I decree that every invisible weight on my shoulders is lifted. I decree that every power that fears my rising is scattered. I decree that every demonic attempt to bury my gifts is destroyed. I decree that every atmosphere of oppression around me clears. I decree that every barrier to my divine assignment is erased. I decree that every satanic wall between me and my testimony falls. Every resistance to my divine timing breaks. Every evil force assigned to stop my breakthrough scatters. I decree that every spiritual blockade over my next level dissolves. I decree that every chain tying my opportunities is cut. I decree that every unseen resistance to my destiny helpers ends. I decree that every demonic stone covering my celebration is moved. I decree that every hindrance around my calling is removed. I decree that every satanic interference with my journey is canceled. I decree that every darkness around my purpose loses force. I decree that every plot to hide my greatness is defeated. I decree that every barrier on my path of success breaks. I decree that every power slowing my destiny releases me. I decree that every tomb where my glory was hidden bursts open. I decree that every satanic guard over my breakthrough is dismissed. I decree that every evil force at my gate of promotion is cast out. I decree that every hindrance to my divine visibility is lifted. I decree that every power that says I will not shine is broken. I decree that every spirit of limitation around me is removed. I decree that every obstruction placed on my destiny line is cleared. I decree that every satanic seal on my elevation is broken. I decree that every darkness around my rising gives way. I decree that every force fighting my manifestation is defeated. I decree that every barrier to my ordained season is destroyed. I decree that every evil monitoring my progress is scattered. I decree that every spiritual stone blocking my advancement moves now. I decree that every negative atmosphere around my destiny shifts. I decree that every demonic attempt to bury my influence is canceled. I decree that every resistance to my open doors is removed. I decree that every power holding back my glory is overthrown. I decree that every invisible trap around my purpose is broken. I decree that every limitation built around my potential crumbles. I decree that every evil decree spoken against my rising is reversed. I decree that every force hiding my value is defeated. I decree that every darkness over my future is dispelled. I decree that every demonic hindrance on my path is wiped out. I decree that every spiritual force fighting my celebration is dismissed. I decree that every enemy of my divine purpose loses power. I decree that every evil blockade restricting my movement is lifted. I decree that every unseen resistance to my blessings is cleared. I decree that every tomb of delay breaks open. I decree that every demonic covering on my star is removed. I decree that every power resisting my breakthroughs is cast down. I decree that every negative influence around my destiny gate is removed. I decree that every invisible chain on my mind is broken. I decree that every attempt to bury my joy is frustrated. I decree that every spiritual embargo on my success is lifted. I decree that every stone placed on my miracle is rolled away. I decree that every barrier to my rising is overturned. I decree that every force of darkness locking my progress is scattered. I decree that every power trying to silence my destiny is defeated. I decree that every obstruction to my shining disappears. Every evil plan to shut down my future is canceled. I decree that every satanic barrier holding my resurrection season is removed. Now, step into what Jesus stepped into by speaking the following. Because Jesus came out of the grave, I come out of every limitation. Because he rose, I rise into my purpose. Because he broke through the grave, I break through every barrier. Because his destiny could not be stopped, my destiny cannot be stopped. Because he manifested his assignment, I manifest my God-given assignment. Because he fulfilled prophecy, I fulfill everything written of me. Because death could not hold him, nothing can hold me. Because he stepped out in glory, I step out in glory. Because he overcame the stone, every stone before me is rolled away. Because he conquered darkness, every darkness around my life scatters. Because he came out with power, I come out with power. Because his rising was guaranteed, my rising is guaranteed. Because he triumphed openly, I triumph openly. Because he emerged victorious, I emerge victorious. Because his destiny spoke, my destiny speaks loudly. Because his light broke forth, my light breaks forth. Because he could not be hidden, I cannot be hidden. Because the grave could not silence him, life cannot silence me. Because he was lifted, I am lifted. Because he moved forward, I move forward. Because heaven backed him, heaven backs me. Because angels worked for him, angels work for me. Because his purpose prevailed, my purpose prevails. Because he outran the plans of his enemies, I outrun the plans of my enemies. Because he rose on time, I rise on time. Because he stepped into destiny, I step into destiny. Because he manifested greatness, I manifest greatness. Because he succeeded, I succeed. Because he came out, I come out. Because he finished well, I finish well. Because he shined, I shine. Because he walked into glory, I walk into glory. Because he broke earthly limitations, I break earthly limitations. Because he could not be stopped by human hands. I cannot be stopped by human hands. Because he fulfilled his mission, I fulfill my mission. Because he stood in victory, I stand in victory. Because he demonstrated power, I demonstrate power. Because he came out unstoppable, I live unstoppable. Because he changed the story, my story changes. Because he rose above forces, I rise above every force. Because he was not trapped, I cannot be trapped. Because he advanced, I advance. Because he stepped into a new chapter, I step into my new chapter. Because he entered resurrection life, I enter my ordained life. Because the grave lost its grip on him, every bondage loses its grip on me. Because he restored hope, hope is restored in me. Because he shifted realms, I shift realms. Because he broke barriers, I break barriers. Because he emerged on the third day, I emerge in my appointed season. Because he walked out free, I walk out free. Because he lived purposefully, I live purposefully. Because he fulfilled heaven's agenda, I fulfill heaven's agenda for my life. Because he rose with authority, I operate with authority. Because he demonstrated divine help, I enjoy divine help. Because he came out bold, I walk in boldness. Because he was celebrated, I am celebrated. Because his enemies could not trap him, my enemies cannot trap me. Because he rose against opposition, I rise against every opposition. Because he carried resurrection glory, I carry divine glory. Because he did not remain in the ground, I refuse to remain in any low place. Because he manifested prophecy, I manifest destiny. Because he stepped into visibility, I step into visibility. Because he walked out in strength, I walk out in strength. Because he entered his next phase, I enter my next phase. Because he proved the power of God, God's power is proven in my life. Because he removed shame, shame is removed from my life. Because he demonstrated victory, victory surrounds me. Because he set an example of triumph, I follow the same pattern of triumph. Because he rose to influence, I rise to influence. Because he stepped out with divine endorsement, I move with divine endorsement. Because he walked into prophecy fulfilled, I walk into prophecy fulfilled. Because he came out with glory, I come out with glory. Because he overcame the grave, I overcome every situation. Because he lived out his calling, I live out my calling. Because he shined brighter than before, I shine brighter than before. Because he entered unstoppable progress, I enter unstoppable progress. Because he was lifted above all, I am lifted above limitations. Because he displayed divine victory, my life displays divine victory. Because he took his place, I take my place. Because he rose with purpose, I rise with purpose. Because he carried resurrection life, I carry divine life. Because he stepped out of confinement, I step out of confinement. Because he ended the assignment of the assignment of the enemy ends in my life. Because he walked into fulfillment, I walk into fulfillment. Because he manifested God's plan, I manifest God's plan. Because he appeared in glory, I appear in glory. Because he came out with strength, I come out with strength. Because he lived above hindrance, I live above hindrance. Because he stood as a conqueror, I stand as a conqueror. Because he completed his journey, I complete my journey. Because he succeeded, I succeed in all that God has written about me.